see you guys in the dark.
This is a note that I got from my stalker the other day. I saw you today. It was your birthday. You didn't see me. You hardly ever do these days. Your skin looked so nice and healthy, and your eyes, they were the most beautiful that I've ever seen. You've grown so much. I remember how different you looked when you were younger. I remember the day that I first met you. It was 4 years ago. I was sitting at my desk, head down, listening to the teacher rattling off names for attendance. The teacher called out a name that I didn't recognize, and a stranger's voice answered behind me. There was a new student. The teacher didn't pause for a second, just continued calling out name after name. I turned my head to where the voice had come from. I saw you, a pale thing, so thin, your eyes so red, at a seat that should have been empty. I saw the fireflies flying around you, flickering, dozens of them never straying far from you. I saw them going through you and coming out through your skin, like you were a mist to them. Can you believe I thought you were a ghost? No one else seemed to acknowledge the new stranger sitting at the back of the class. Class after class, hour after hour passed as I waited for something to happen, for someone to just notice you, for you to leave, for you to let out a ghoulish scream and claw at me like the horror story I was certain I was in. But nothing happened. Teachers came and went. My classmates laughed and slept, and you just sat there. The bell rang for recess. The other kids ran to their mundanities for the day, leaving me and you together in the empty classroom. You stood up and pulled a chair from the desk next to you, making it face your desk. You turned your head to me and spoke. Well, you're slow today. Come on, ask me your questions. I don't know why I didn't run away screaming at the moment. Probably would have turned out better for me in the long run, but let's not speculate. I guess at that point in my life, I was pretty bloodily lonely. I figured there was only a 50-50 chance you'd eat me, and the other 50 was that someone wanted to talk with me. Kid priorities don't make sense to me either these days. So I went along with the flow. I walked over to the desk, sat down on the chair you pulled for me, and asked my question. What were you? You told me that you didn't know. You said that once you were a child, just like me, with parents and friends. You used to go to the same schools as me. Then one day, one ordinary day, when you were 10, you just woke up and you were like this, covered in fireflies, and no one can remember you the moment they concentrated on anything else. No one, not even your parents. You told me of how I'd notice you every day, how I'd think of you until recess every day, how I'd come to you every day, how we would talk every single day, how we would meet for the first time every single day for the last 3 years, about how I'd forget the instant I walked out of the room, how everyone would forget you, how the fireflies would make them, how for the last 3 years you'd been alone. Your story was very hard to believe, so I didn't. I asked what reality prank show that I was on. You looked, well, unimpressed, and you asked me to continue telling my story. I was caught off guard by the non sequitur. You said last time I was here, I was telling you a story. As you detailed the story, goosebumps prickled my skin. It was a story I'd been making up in my own head. A story I hadn't told anyone yet. At that moment, a million reactions were upon me, all simultaneously adequate and inadequate. But the only thing that seemed proper was to finish the story for you, so I did. Halfway through, you interrupted me to ask if my mother had recovered from her sickness yet. I had to shake my head, a bit ashamed at the fact that I shared this private matter to a stranger. The story ended only a few minutes before recess. The next class was in another room. You told me to go. Your readiness took me back. You seemed so accepting of your fate, like you'd already gotten used to the idea of being forgotten forever. I was a kid back then. I wasn't a particularly smart kid, and I was probably on the onset of a crush, so you can excuse what I did next as an example of my childhood stupidity. I grabbed my scissors, pressed it against my arm skin, and dug in. I pushed it forward till the cut formed the shape I wanted. Letter by letter, I drew your name. Just so you know, I don't regret that. Don't get me wrong. Kid powers might have made me do it, but it sure as hell didn't make the pain go away. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life. But even then as a kid, I thought what was happening to you was unfair. I remember how your eyes looked when you saw that, the confusion. How strange it was for you that anyone would want to remember. I remember that look so clearly. When I woke up the next day and saw your name on my arm, I remembered you. I didn't forget. That day, for the first time, we had a conversation that wasn't one-sided. You said no one had ever done anything like that before, and suggested I might have a mental illness. I won't deny it. That drew a little blood. As you talked, a creeping thought came into my head. Did you prefer it when I didn't remember? That night I was sitting up on my bed, staring at your name on my arm, wondering if I should cover it up so I couldn't see and give you back your privacy. Then I heard a crash. I looked up to see my bedroom window shattered and a dirty rock on my floor. I looked out of the cracked window to see a dark figure on my lawn. You were outside yelling about how we should hang out. It took me a while to get used to how bad you were at talking to people. Years without practice made you quite a bit rusty. That was all right. We had a lot of time. For the next 2 years, we spent most of our free time together. Most of the time, we just talked. You'd tell me an aspect of your life and how you lived. You still stayed in your old house. Your parents never noticed the food that had gone missing, never noticed the extra room, or that you'd stolen the extra keys. One night I confided in you that I was beginning to think you were part of an imagination, Fight Club style. After all, what could you do to me that I couldn't do to myself? You spent the next month or so trying to leave bite marks on my ear or neck to prove a point. I still have a few scars on my ear, so I guess you did. Looking back, I can see the warning signs even then. Your skin seemed to get worse and worse, paler and paler, and you'd rub your eyes raw. It was in winter we had our wake-up call. The morning began like any other. I woke up and brushed my teeth, started searching for clothes to wear. It was a winter morning, and my room was dark, so I didn't see your name on my arm. The cold sent shivers through my body and pulled out a long-sleeve jacket. A small bell rang in my head. Don't you usually roll your sleeves up? Yeah, and why did I? That was annoying. I finished tidying up and headed to school. On the school bus, I felt oddly content, like something I'd been worried about had just happened or disappeared. I walked up to the school stairs, down the hall through my classroom door, and sat down at my desk. The same feeling of a burden forgotten hounded my mind. What was I forgetting? When recess came, I just sat at my desk while my classmates ran out. It felt like a ritual, but I didn't know what for. I was contemplating just walking out to join them when I heard it. It was something small in the wind, like a whisper. It came over and over. It sounded like my name. I knew this was strange, but this was worth my attention. But I felt oddly calm. Something could be all right. Everything would just be fine, so just ignore it. I sat there at my desk, my mind a war zone between two conflicting, contradictory voices, when I felt a force tugging on my sleeve. The moment I noticed this, my jacket sleeve tore open. I saw your name on my arm, and then your hand that had ripped my jacket open. You'd been yelling at me for over 20 minutes. I think that was the moment we realized how on edge our friendship really was. One accident away from complete erasure. We spent most of the next year in the town library together, trying to find out what the fireflies were. It wasn't really a problem for me, because of my mother's treatment. My family couldn't afford to go on any trips, and our house didn't have heating anymore, so I was happy to spend my time with you. Trying to find information was a puzzle in and of itself. After all, how could I read about people I couldn't remember? And how could you find out who was special when no one would even remember enough about them to record them? Found our old family trees and records. Individually, we'd write down the names of everyone in the book on 2 lists, and then we would compare. The names I hadn't remembered to write down, but you had, would become the focus. They were the names of who were under the curse of the fireflies. We compiled a list of suspicious books we thought would help us because they were written by or were about the people we were searching for. I read the books with the list of names side by side, reading it again for every page of the book. You scoured the internet on the library computers, on the lookout for articles about the people. our search would lead to the first glimpse we got of what was really happening. It was late at night when you found the picture. I was a bit drowsy at that time, and almost about to nod off when I heard a sharp intake of breath. I turned to see you standing up, pointing at the screen. I didn't see anything, anything noteworthy. On the screen was a picture of a clearing somewhere in the woods. You held up your piece of paper where you'd marked down 2 names. Susie Reagan and Terry Reagan, siblings. For a moment I saw the paper and the screen side by side. And then I saw them, 2 figures emerging from the woods towards the camera. They were almost humanoid, with the exception of their limbs, which stretched out to nightmarish proportions. Their blank white skin was that of a pure albino, and looked more like tree bark than anything you expected to find on a mammal. A cloud of fireflies surrounded the duo. The shorter one looked emaciated. I could see their rib cages, around which their eyes, their eyes, so small and so red. The taller one with its white hair didn't look alive anymore. They were little more than skin wrapped around a skeleton. The fireflies swarmed out of the pair's empty eye sockets. Both reached for the cameraman. The article surrounding the picture. It was a blog posted by a hiker, 20 years after the last mention of the 2 kids. The picture was a mystery to the cameraman as well. He'd been wanting to go to the woods pictured for a while now, but he never actually remembered going there. The picture had just appeared on his camera one day, out of the blue. For a moment I looked at your face, your thin, pale face, with those red-veined eyes. Would that be you when my scar faded? Just a walking horror I'd glimpse, then forget. We worked through our reading list at a much faster pace, starting from that moment. Maybe we should have gone slower. At least every book, every website we'd left untouched, promised some hope. The books that we finished and tossed aside promised nothing but the clearing in the woods as one's future. And we tossed aside a lot of books. I believe I tore through 3 of my reading list before I stumbled across the journal. Oh God, that horrible journal. The journal used to belong to a mental patient named Joey, who claimed to be a serial killer. He was locked in an asylum when the police discovered his supposed victims never existed. He was diagnosed with a need for attention and shoved away. They should have electrocuted him. They should have fried him until his flesh melted. In the journal, he talked about how he carried out his victims' ends. He knew things, bizarre and disturbing things no one else knew. He knew of strange creatures that lived in the woods. Of them, his favorites were the fireflies. I'm not going to tell you how he summoned these things. I trust you. I trust you more than anyone. But a thing like this belongs to the ground more than it ever will to the human mind. In the end, it's sufficient to know that these things were not fireflies. Joey just started his ritual by taking a kid, any one that he pleased. He would take them at any time, in the dead of night from their own homes, or in broad daylight from their front yards. It didn't matter if he was seen. He'd take them to his house and drag them inside. Usually an Amber Alert would come up at this point. He didn't care. Like I said, it wouldn't matter soon. He dragged them to a special room in his house, where the fireflies would come and latch onto them. Now nobody was searching for the kids. Not the police, not the parents, nobody. From then on, he would do whatever he wanted to the kid. He'd get bored of them after a day or two, after the child had broken. At that point, he disposed of them. Anything that would work. He detailed a large pitch of bodies he kept in the woods, swarming with bugs. One day, I guess he got bored of that, and he went right to the police station and turned himself in. Not on account of guilt, no. He just wanted someone to know about the stuff he was doing. I don't get the wrong idea. He never stopped doing it with kids. The asylum doors didn't stop him from doing what he liked. It just made him improvise. He made a new way. He modified things, so the fireflies could survive, just in a dormant state. When a child, he specified the age, would approach the swarm, it would latch on and begin its effects. I wish I would hate him in peace. I wish I would see the world owed him nothing, but that wouldn't be true. He detailed a way out. On the final page, there was an exact explanation on how to get rid of the fireflies. You must have seen something in my face, because at that moment, you asked if I had found anything. I said no and just closed the book. A few minutes later, you shut down the computer. You picked up the last book and went through it yourself. When you reached the end cover, tossed it aside. I asked what we should do now. You said that it was all right. I could go home. We'd talk about it in the morning. I stood up and walked past the shelves of books. I headed for the library entrance, but stopped right outside the door and waited. I waited until I heard the sniffling sounds. I sneaked back to our table, where we were quietly sobbing. You had your head in my hands. I sat down as you raised your eyes to me. You said you wished you'd never met me. How happy you were you had nothing to lose. How I just ruined your life. You've never really gotten better at talking to people. That was the worst love confession I'd ever heard. I remember how we kissed that night. I remember your hands gripping my hair. I just remember that kiss. I wish it could have just been a kiss. I'm sorry that I ruined the moment. When my arms were around you, I was close enough to steal a firefly without you noticing. I remember holding the firefly in my hand. I remember how it struggled until it didn't, until it was a part of me. The fireflies shifted. They came over to me and just left you. For the familiar look in your eyes, the confusion. I never wanted to see that confusion in your eyes again. You deserve to be loved, and you deserve to know that. I wasn't really living anyways. You reached for me. I pulled away as the last lights of recognition faded from your eyes, and then you were staring at a stranger, walking away into a crowd of strangers. That was a year ago. You've gotten so much better since then. You have so many friends now, so many people at your birthday party. You also looked so healthier. I haven't been as fortunate. My skin's gotten a lot paler. My eyes hurt all the time now. I couldn't go to school like you did all those years. I haven't wasted my time, though. I found Joey's pit. There's a grave for those kids now. Without me, my mom could afford her surgery. She looked so happy. Just yesterday, I saw her playing with my baby brother. I saw you crying yesterday. You were with your friends, laughing. For a brief moment, your eyes met mine, and they were so wet. I think I'm going away, for good. I think you're not going to be happy if I stick around. I'm so happy I've met you, even if you can't remember me. Before I begin this story, I would like to say that I live in a big college town, so posting or responding to Craigslist ads looking for roommates is completely normal. This takes place last Thursday night. My best friend, Katie, was looking for a roommate as she lived with her mom and wanted to move out as soon as possible. She posted an ad on Craigslist looking for a one-bedroom or a room for rent with roommates. A guy about her age, who was 22, texted her, telling her that he and his girlfriend were about to have a room for rent in their town, as their other roommate was moving out. Excited and surprised at the affordability, Katie agreed to meet him and check the place out. Since she's not an idiot, she brought our good friend Damon with her. They met this guy, and the neighbors and Katie decided that she really liked him and the place, but needed to get another opinion about it. Later that night, Katie called me and asked if I wanted to go back over there to meet this guy. She told me how cool he was and how much we all have in common. I agreed. I texted my boyfriend, who was at work at the time, to let him know where I'd be just in case. We arrived in the apartment, and I instantly drawn to this guy. He had great energy and was all over very sweet. His girlfriend worked across the street and came over for a few minutes on her break. She was all very sweet, and I recognized her as one of my friend's sisters. She went back to work, and we continued talking and laughing with the guy and his neighbors. The guy had made a comment about him and his girlfriend, and how they used to be into orgies and things like that. Katie and I, however, are not into such things. We left around 3 a.m. so that I could go pick up my boyfriend from work. The next night, Katie asked me if I wanted to go back over there to hang out, have a few drinks, and get to know his girlfriend a little better. Once again, I agreed. It was just the 4 of us this time, and we were all taking a few shots. Had a couple of mixed drinks as well. His girlfriend has anxiety like Katie and I, and ended up having a horrible drunken panic attack. We left shortly after, as it was a bit much to handle and didn't think much of it. Now, my and Katie's favorite movie is Harry Potter. They invited us over on Saturday night to have a Harry Potter marathon, and unfortunately, my boyfriend was at work and couldn't attend. Everything was completely normal until he put the second movie in. Katie and I were sitting on the floor, and his girlfriend came down to join us for some girl talk and whatnot. Later, he came down to join us. Everything was normal for all of 10 seconds when he decided to lay across all three of us. He started groping Katie, and she started groping me. Katie and I made it clear that this was not okay. Being pinned under the girlfriend, I was not able to get up as she is much bigger than me. She begins to put her hands down my pants and insert her fingers as I'm trying to get up and telling her to stop. He gets behind his girlfriend and begins to have sex with her. Katie and I are trying to stand up. And he finally says, "Oh, are you not comfortable with this?" We tell him we are never comfortable with it and we needed to leave. He lays down next to us as we are gathering our things and begins masturbating. All the while his girlfriend is trying to pull us back down and tackles Katie, begins groping her again. We finally break free and run out of the house. The next day we filed a police report for sexual assault and are still waiting to hear from a detective. Moral of the story is, don't look for roommates on Craigslist, and don't trust people because they seem nice. Creepy, forceful orgy couple. I really don't want to talk to you ever again. Update. I got a call from the detective assigned to the case yesterday. Unfortunately, I am out of state, so I can't go in for the interview until next Monday. I'll update after the interview and let you know what happened with the case. Update number 2. I had my interview with the detective at the very end of April and just got word back about what happened to those creeps. Apparently something was off with their interview, and the police thought it was probable cause for arrest because they are now in jail with charges of criminal sexual assault. I don't have all of the details yet, but I'm quite shocked any arrests were made as we didn't have any physical evidence. Depending on their pleas, my friend and I may have to testify. Please, don't be afraid to go to the police or anyone if something like this has happened to you. Any kind of sexual predator deserves that punishment. And when it comes their way, it is not your fault that it has happened. This happened almost a year ago, when I was 16. It was the first week of summer, and 2 friends and I decided to go to Florence for a day. At about 2 p.m., we decided to split up. They wanted to go to the Galleria, but I had already been there only a few months prior, so we set a meeting point and time. And while they went to the museum, I decided to search for the Basilica of San Miniato al Monte. That church is on top of a very steep hill, and thanks to my awesome orienteering skills, I got lost almost immediately, so I asked a random guy for directions. He is the creeper in this story, and will henceforth be referred to as Orgy Man. Orgy Man was in his late 40s, really skinny and scrawny, awful facial hair, and a strong Tuscan accent. He claimed that he was going to the church too, and we went to the rest of the way together. At first we made normal and small talk, but once we got in front of the basilica, things got really weird. Before I go any further, there are a few things that you should know about me. I've always been incredibly shy, awkward, and unattractive. I'm simply not used to receiving male attention, and the few times that it happens, I'm completely stumped and don't really know how to react. That's why I didn't walk away when things got creepy. I know it's stupid, but when I find myself in this kind of situation, I simply have no idea what to do, and just go with the flow. We were in a pretty crowded tourist area, so I don't think I was ever in any danger. I don't really remember the exact development of our conversation, so here's a few gems. He said that he spent 7 years traveling through Asia to study Eastern religions. On a beach in Thailand, he saw the Virgin Mary in the clouds, smiling at him. A bit weird, but lots of people in Italy are hardcore Catholics. He also said that he had the power to read minds. Sure, dude. A lot of his ideas about the Roman Empire were bad history worthy. For example, he blamed foreign slaves for the fall of the empire. We knew all of Dante's Inferno by heart. Seriously. Even the Canto 33, my favorite. I don't care how much of a creep he turned out to be later. That's pretty awesome, though. Eventually, Orgy Man started comparing me to the Roman goddess. I felt flattered and uncomfortable at the same time. A real craziness started when he mentioned his activity as an amateur historian. He claimed to have read the manuscript of some mystic saint from the Middle Ages, where she described certain practices that apparently took place in a lot of monasteries. Nuns and monks would meet at night and, yes, have orgies. They tied in with this Eastern studies, as Orgy Man claimed that divine orgies were a way to talk to God. Homosexual relationships don't count because sex with someone of your same gender is like masturbation, in that it doesn't release any cosmic energy. But a divine orgy doesn't have anything to do with what you kids do at the club every Saturday night, because a divine orgy is a sacred ritual with certain rules that he detailed, but I don't remember because I was still trying to process the fact that he thought this was an even remotely appropriate topic to discuss with an underage girl that he just met. When we eventually visited the church together, he pointed to the crypt and said priests and nuns probably met down here to have orgies. A true man of culture. After those interesting tidbits, Orgy Man sadly reverted to an ordinary creeper. He started begging for my phone number, which I obviously didn't give him, and said that he wanted to take me to his study to show me all of his ancient documents. When I said that I wasn't interested in becoming his disciple, he replied, "I bet I can make you fall in love with me." Ugh, no thank you, man. After I made it clear that I was there with some friends, who would very well be worried if I didn't show up to our meeting point, he finally left me alone. We separated, and I admit that he said some very interesting, although batshit crazy things. Anyway, weird creeper obsessed with medieval sexuality. I really hope that we never meet again. I'm a 20-year-old female who just got herself a job at a wellness, which houses a gym, pool, sauna, and more. In my short time working in the wellness reception, sauna, and beauty salon where I had the pleasure of working, and talking with many people who visit us for recreation and relaxation. Most of my out-of-salon work is in the reception area, which also houses a small coffee shop and bar, where most of our customers take coffee or a shake before entering the pool area. We use a check-in system with bracelets, which we program to open certain areas of the wellness according to what package a person pays for. For instance, if a person wishes to use saunas and the pool, then we program the bracelets to be usable on the doors leading to those areas. But sometimes the program freezes up, and my misfortune of this happens the second week of my employment. Of course, I did not know this could happen, and I wasn't informed on what to do in such a situation. My coworker stood behind me, and we both talked while two well-groomed men approached. Both were obviously into the fitness scene. I, of course, offered a greeting and looked up from the chair of the reception desk to my left, where there is also a door to wellness. First thing I had felt was extreme sense of unease. Just a gut feeling telling me there was something off about these two guys. The first guy was tall of stature. His face had this emotionless bore expression, like my mere existence inconvenienced him. He was a good-looking man, I guess. By society's standards, anyway. His friend just stood off by his side, but never next to him, as I would find out this was always the case in the next few weeks. The first guy we will call Bob, and the second will be Dave. Dave as well gave off a creepy vibe, which my coworker never seemed to pick up on as she chatted with them. I, in the meantime, struggled to get the bracelets ready, and remarked that the program wasn't working. My coworker quickly found the fault, and the Bob guy just tisked at me and went through the door with a low chuckle. Next time the program froze up was a couple of days later, and the two guys were back. Timing can be cruel. I apologized and said it will take a minute, and made eye contact only to find a dead stare, and Bob being awfully close with his height towering over me in a small chair. I nervously chuckled again, gave them the bracelets, which they took harshly from my hands, and tisking yet again. I shook off the encounter and proceeded to mind my own business. Over the next 2 weeks, I avoided the reception when they were present, and almost always the Bob guy would give me this deep pan cold eye stare. I pretended not to notice, though. I'm almost a masseuse, and had been given the instructions to go seek out 2 clients from the sauna resting area, and with my bad luck I stumbled directly upon the guys. At first I thought it was funny, because they were wearing mud masks, and I couldn't recognize that it was them. So I asked if they were the massage customers, and the Dave guy, who was always behind him, started turning around, and said that I can do it right there, while almost exposing himself to me. I was confused, and apologized for my mistake once I realized that it was them. And not a second later, my spa manager came in, and said that it was her mistake for informing me of seeking out the clients in the sauna, because they were actually waiting in the other part of the spa. I walked out fast, embarrassed by my mistake. That sauna mistake happened over a weekend, and with Monday afternoon, the men returned. Early in the evening before they arrived, I was helping out in the bar in the rush hour, and a man asked to borrow a swimsuit for men. With little time to spare, and my coworker's approval, I lended him a dark blue swimming trunks with a green inside band. It's what I remember from the quick grab from the lost and found drawer. The details of the trunks were hazy. Later on, the men arrived, and while waiting for their coffee, the Bob guy spoke up, in a belittling way, describing my identity mistake on the sauna day over the weekend. I laughed it off and tried to be friendly. My coworker who stood by my side laughed it off as well, and he frowned. I moved to the reception area to check out a few things, because my shift was ending in 15 minutes. And while my coworker was talking to them, I felt safe enough to be close to the reception desk. The coffee shop was pretty much empty at this point, and the Dave guy stood up and moved past me. Bob stayed behind, and my coworker went outside on a smoke. Not a second passed, and Bob shot up, moving into the desk area. I tried not to tense up, and I put on a friendly demeanor. He insisted on me to check the lost and found area, but not saying what he lost. I stood up and moved to the wall with the covered shelf and half-open door while suddenly the guy had moved 3 meters to the cabinet where I was standing and invading my personal space while hovering over me. He still was not specific on what kind of item he had lost. He was already looking in. Then he asked if there was any swimming trunks with flowers. He leaned in even more, and suddenly in my head, red flags sprung up. I asked, maybe they have a green inner border or a darker blue color? No, they have flowers. Okay, maybe we will find them today after we clean everything up at the end of the day. If you have not found them yesterday, then you won't find them today. Well, I am sure we can try, sir. How did you know they had flowers? You said you don't have them. Then why did you ask about flowers? Sir, I did not say anything about flowers. I only asked about the inner green color band and dark blue color. You said flowers. You think I hear voices? No, sir. I did not say that. I said it in a calm and serious and confident way. I had my fair share of gaslight attempts in my life, but the way he leaned in with that horrible cold look made me feel so small. He suddenly backed off and said it in a sarcastic way that he must be hearing voices then. Well, let's hope your fitness right now will fix that, I answered back. He tisked yet again and left like nothing happened. I'll be seeing him almost every day at work. Who am I dealing with here? They look like normal, handsome young men. Because seriously, Flower Bob, man, let's not meet again. You definitely creep me out. Some years ago, I got stuck in a city because my transport was late, and I missed the train I was supposed to get on to continue my journey. I got a cheap room at a cheap hotel in a not-so-shady part of town, and thought to myself that as long as I take my precautions and don't take any stupid chances, nothing will happen to me. I'm a petite female, and back then I was about 20 years old and not too brave either. When arriving at the hotel, I quickly noticed there were some bars on the other side of the street, and further down there was a 24-hour open store. But the street there wasn't very well lit, so I decided that I wasn't going to go over there. I came up to my room and fell asleep pretty quickly. After a few hours, I was awakened by shouting and laughing from the street. The bars was closing, and people were heading in all directions. I looked out the window and noticed a crowd on the street. I was so hungry and decided I would run down and over to the store quickly to get some food, and then run back to the hotel room before the street emptied again. When I arrived at the entrance, I had to walk by 2 guys chatting lively in a language I didn't understand. They were loud and kept looking back into the store. I excused myself and made my way around them. Inside, I got what I was looking for, and I got in line. There was quite a line built up of drunk people looking for a snack. The girl before me had real trouble paying for her food. She dropped her wallet on the floor, and coins poured out. I quickly bent down to help her gather it up, and I noticed how incredibly drunk she was. Totally not present at all. The cashier started to get impatient and asked the girl, "Are you having the stuff or what? The total is..." She had trouble counting up her money, so I stepped up and asked if she needed any help. She just showed me her hand, and I picked out the amount and handed it to the cashier. She then walked away. I paid for my own food and turned around to walk out when I suddenly noticed that the two other guys standing outside had been joined by a third, and all of them were standing maybe 20 meters from the entrance with a big black van with it running. I could see the face of one of them in the dim light, and I swear my blood froze. Till this day, I have never seen such cold predator eyes in my life, and they were staring at the drunk girl who was standing and looking at the magazine cover just beside the sliding front doors. Every time she moved and the doors would open, I saw the men standing there. I had no idea what to do, but was sure as hell not going to let that girl outside alone. So I went over to her and asked her if she was alone, if her friends were out in the street or anything. But no, she didn't have anyone there with her. I decided to grab her hand and told her that she had to come with me. She was so drunk at that time that she didn't object even a little, just squeezed my hand back, and I didn't wait any longer. We walked out onto the street, and I almost fainted of anxiety when I saw the guys following us with their eyes. I was so scared they were going to follow us or something. It was only maybe 100 meters to the hotel, but it was dark, and most of the people who were there earlier had scattered in all directions. Luckily, one of the bar doors opened, and out came a small crowd of people. I didn't wait for anything. I screamed, "Hey, wait up, we're right here, we're coming," as loud as I could, and they stopped and just looked at us while I tried to run with the girl dragging beside me. One of the guys shouted something back, but I didn't catch what it was. Just continued to move forward as fast as we could. I thanked them for waiting and explained what was up. Then the guy that shouted at us told me that he saw a shadow of somebody running alongside the brick wall of the buildings on the dark side of the street when he heard my yelling. They walked with us to the hotel, and I took the girl to my room. I was so shaken up that I didn't fall asleep before sometime in the morning, but my new friend fell asleep before she hit the bed. The next morning she woke up and asked for something to drink. Suddenly, she opens her eyes and looks at me like she has no clue what's been going on. I then quickly explained what happened the night before, and that I couldn't leave her alone as I suspected the guys were up to no good at all. She was shocked to hear this, and didn't remember anything other than going out with her friends, got some drinks, and then it went black. I walked her to the bus stop, and we had some coffee before she went home. I caught the train that I had missed the night before. So creepy guys who are waiting for a defenseless, out-of-mind drunk girl, I definitely don't want to see you guys again. A lot of bad shit happened to me when me and my family moved to a different city. So we moved away because my mom got a new boyfriend, and I just so happened to get involved with my stalker, who was also moving to this city. I was about 15 or 16, and my sister was about 13 or 14. My mom recently divorced to her husband, who was cheating on her while she was in the hospital with medical issues. When we first moved there, everything was super normal. We took good care of my mom, and they seemed super happy, until I started school after the summer. His job gave him less hours, and so he was home more often. So, boyfriend also had a son about 9, but acted like a 3-year-old, still wearing diapers. His dad would have him to wipe his kid's ass because he still didn't know how. He would visit every so often. He would sleep in my room, as I had a spare mattress under my bed that I'd pull out when he had to sleep. I started noticing I felt super uncomfortable when he was in my room, like someone was just watching me. Many times I'd turn around, and he was staring at me. So I told my mom I don't want him in my room. She made him sleep with the boyfriend, and my mom would sleep in my room. What really pissed me off is how this kid would piss himself to get his way. I'd always ask before I had to take a shower if anyone needed to pee before I would go in. Well, his kid decided he had to pee as soon as I got into the shower. And so boyfriend and his fucking kid came into the bathroom without asking, so his kid could pee or whatever. It scared the shit out of me, as I wasn't expecting it. Someone rips the curtain open a bit, and I pulled it back yelling for them to get the hell out now. I told my mom, and she yelled at the boyfriend, said to ask next time, and she told me to just lock the door. So I locked the door next time. His son screams that he needs to pee after I asked, and then got into the shower. Boyfriend slams on the door asking for him to use it, but I denied it. The child pisses himself, and I got my privacy. One night, me and my sister were hanging out in my room, and we hear my mom and her boyfriend have a huge fight. My sister runs out and gets involved as it sounded so aggressive we were scared for her. My mom told my sister to go to her room, and it's not her business. But boyfriend yells at my sister at the top of his lungs to fuck off, slammed his hand on the table. I tugged her, crying, into my room, while my mom got super pissed at him for talking to her daughter like that. Some time passes, and more he becomes aggressive towards my sister, and my mom to the point my sister decided to go live with her dad. My mom and boyfriend often would break up and get back together. Once my sister left, a boyfriend started giving me money, allowance if you will. I told my mom, and she thought that it was bullshit because he didn't do that with my sister. Boyfriend's excuse was I was now lonely at school, so I should go out to lunch with my friends. So we fluffed it off. Then they start fighting again, and he was so emotionally abusive to her that it was sad. I watched my mom go from happy and full of life to depressed, just making it by. Each day they would fight, and boyfriend would complain to me that he wishes she was more like me. One day I had my guy friends come over. All in all, there were 3 guy friends, and I. My mom said that it was okay if we all played video games in the basement, so we did. Boyfriend comes home and yells at my mom that I'm not allowed to have guys over, and he doesn't want orgies in his house. She tells him she's my mother and has a say in what I do, and that she would know if that's what we were doing. I was so embarrassed that I asked them if they could all leave, and they did. Later that night, we had to pick up stuff for dinner, and it was just me and him who went. Boyfriend, you're not allowed to date, you know. Yeah, I'm not. I just prefer guy friends as we share interests. Boyfriend, guys only want one thing, and it's to treat you like meat, and I'm not allowing that. I just stay silent. You know that I love you, right? I stay silent. He rubbed my leg, and I just stared at his hand and started to cry. Got our stuff and went home. I made dinner, said that I ate a big lunch, and headed to bed. That night I had an awful feeling, like someone was watching me, but the sun was not over. I always kept my door closed at night, but in the morning it was open. This kept happening from time to time, so I started to lock my door. One day I wake up for school, and my throat hurt so bad, I couldn't talk at all. I tell my mom, who was heading out for work, and she told my boyfriend to take care of me and take me to the clinic to get checked out. I had strep throat. I had to stay home from school for quite a few days and take a medicine that made me super dozy. I'd just pass out. I'm very sensitive to medicine at this time because I am not eating. So it was all that I had in my stomach. Doctor says to be careful, not to take too much, as it has a bit of codeine in it, which can be addictive in large dosages. So I did as the doctor said, but boyfriend tells my mom the doctor said a larger amount. Then what I remember, and that I'd have to finish the whole bottle even after I'm not sick. My mom doesn't believe him about taking it after I'm not sick, so she tells me not to do that. Maybe it's because I didn't lock my door while I was sick, or something. I'm just not sure what his intentions were. He progressively gets more and more creepy. He gets possessive of me. He makes sexual comments towards me and tries to massage me. I finally get fed up and say that I'm telling my mom, to which he says, "Not if you want to keep her around," in a very aggressive tone. Eventually, me and Mom decided to move back home, and the last thing he said to me was, "You're always welcome to stay with me if you need to visit your friends here." He said that with a smirk in front of my mom. She said, "Like hell we will." I'm pretty sure he abused my mom, but never when I was around though. I'm not quite sure. He never sexually assaulted me from what I know, but he treated me like his wife, and my mom like garbage. I hate him so much, and I get night terrors that he is still watching me sleep. So basically, my mom's boyfriend was a creep, but we got the hell out of there and never looked back. I told her he was creepy towards me, and she agreed, but I never told her the full story, as I don't want her to blame herself for what some sick man did to us. I left out details, of course, but those are the main things that made him creepy, like how he would often ask me to marry him. Just don't want to get into all of that stuff. So, to the asshole ex of my mom, I really don't want to ever think or see you ever again. I moved a lot growing up. By the time freshman year of high school came around, I had moved 7 or so more times. So it was about a year and a half into my most recent move. I had found a pretty close group of friends in middle school, and we all went to high school together. I met him through one of those close friends. They were in band together, and even though he almost was 4 years older than us, we welcomed him into our group. Sam was easily twice my size, tall and heavyset, and originally kind of intimidating. Although I was never afraid of large men before him. Lesson learned. I had a kind of bad home life, and I spent as much time as I could at school, sometimes hanging around the school campus until 6 or 7 at night with his friend group. 3 of us lived in the same direction, and we would walk the half-hour trip together until our paths split. One slightly colder evening, Sam offered to walk me home since the others had gone home already. I just thought that he was being a gentleman. He mentioned something from a previous move when he lived in California. He didn't walk a friend home, and something horrible happened. He left it at that, and I let him walk me home. We got a lot closer after that. We bonded over both living in California and exchanged numbers. He would message me late into the night about his depression and self-harm, and I just wanted to help. A few months later, he tried asking me out. It was this big romantic gesture. He learned a Disney song on the ukulele and sang to me in the cafeteria. But I was already dating someone, and when I turned him down, he got angry. A freaky, quiet, twitchy kind of angry. I felt so bad for him. I started seeing him everywhere. We were still friends. We still hung out in groups. But I would pass him on the street walking somewhere, and a few minutes later I'd see that he changed directions and had started to follow me. He would walk me to classes by following me in passing period at a distance. I started to minimize the group time we spent together, and he would follow me even more. I had friends meet me at each class and walk me to the next one because I felt unsafe. He knew where I lived. Then he started to talk. Not to me, but to mutual friends about that one girl in California who he tried to walk home. At first, he just shared my name. Some crazy coincidence. Then she had the same brown curly hair and blue eyes. And every time he rambled about her, she became more and more like me. And then he said what happened. Over literal weeks, this fantasy evolved. They were walking home, and they were jumped by some guy with a knife. It was a robbery gone wrong on her birthday, January 24th, which was my birthday. And she died horribly, and he couldn't react in time. She bled out in his arms. Sarah, who has brown curly hair, blue eyes, my name, my birthday, and sounds just like me, bled out in his arms. Each retelling added more and more detail, and this guy with his sick fantasy about my death would follow me around and knew where I lived. My boyfriend was abusive, mentally and physically, but I stayed as close to him as I could, even whenever I could, because if the worst happened, I knew for sure he would throw a punch. I never felt safe at school, or in our little town walking home from school in the dark. One day he had a breakdown, freaking out, and ran out of the school in a panic. I was sent after him, and I found him curled up on the floor. I got closer. I knew about his anxiety and depression, and my safety aside, I wanted to make sure that he was okay. It was then that he told me his horrifying story that I had been hearing from mutual friends, with added detail. He had been walking home from a concert in California. We passed a dark alley, and a homeless man came out with a rusty knife and asked for anything valuable. I fumbled for my phone. I didn't have anything else on me, and he thought I was calling the cops. He stabbed me once, twice, again and again, and Sam stood there horrified. He saw red and grabbed a broken glass bottle near my body and attacked the homeless man. He killed him with his own knife, told me he killed someone. My stalker had killed someone. It didn't matter how messed up he was anymore. I didn't care if it was a fantasy or real. I didn't care how it would affect his mental health anymore. I wanted to go to the police. I was scared for my life. My friends convinced me to go to the school counselor first. That morning we went and told them everything. The stalking, the stories, how he admitted to murder, and that was the reason they moved to California. How I was afraid for my life and wanted to call the police. The counselor didn't take us seriously. She went to the principal, and the principal, not a mental health expert, called Sam in to talk about the accusations. The principal then informed me that he did not take that Sam had any kind of mental illness, or that I was in any danger, and that was that. I lost faith in adults, gave up on going to the police, stayed with my friend, walking me in between classes, hiding behind my abusive boyfriend, and looking behind me every step of the way, walking home that year. The counselors ended up gaslighting us to the point where this all feels like a fever dream now, and I would think it's made up, or if it weren't for my journal entries recording the events, and my growing panic, and also the similar stories from my friend groups. I'm really hoping that this guy gets the help that he deserves. I really know that he has a mental illness, but nobody is doing anything about this. My name is Jenny. I'm a 35-year-old female, and this happened to me when I was 11 years old. I lived in a cozy little neighborhood in Long Beach, California with my parents, grandparents, and my little brother who was 7. We had these next-door neighbors. There was a mother and a father, with a daughter who was the same age as me. I'll call her Jay. I would always go over to her house during summer breaks. On the summer when I was 11, Jay's uncle had moved into their house. He was around 28 years old. I remember being at their house one afternoon, and the uncle comes home. When he sees me, he just stares at me. Being 11, I got really shy and a little uncomfortable. He kept staring at me from head to toe. He had this lustful expression on his face the whole time. The uncle calls Jay over and says, "Who is your pretty little friend, Jay?" She responds with, "Oh, that's Jenny. She lives next door." The uncle smiles at me and says, "Hello, it's nice to meet you. You're so beautiful." I give a small smile and say very softly, "Thank you." After that, I tell Jay that I needed to go home to help my mom with something. Anything to get out of that uncomfortable situation. The next day, Jay comes over all giggly and tells me, "Hey, my uncle has a huge crush on you." I tell her, "Isn't he old? I'm 11, so I think any adult is a million years old." Jay responds with, "Yeah, but he's really nice." I tell Jay that I think it's weird that an old guy would like a little kid. She agrees with me. Then we head out to bike around the neighborhood, and I quickly forget about what she tells me about her creepy uncle. That afternoon, I'm already at home just watching TV when the cordless house phone rings. This is 1996, so cell phones were not a thing yet. My mom answers, and she tells me that Jay wants to talk to me. I grab the phone, and I say, "Hey, Jay, what's up?" She's giggling and says, "Someone wants to talk to you." She passes the phone to someone, and I hear her creepy uncle say, "Hello, sexy girl. What are you doing right now?" I immediately start to get nervous. I nervously say, "Watching TV," and then the uncle goes on by saying how much he thinks that I'm sexy and pretty, and that he liked his girls young. I completely freak out and hang up on the phone. I tell my mom that if Jay calls back again, to tell her that I'm tired and I'm asleep. She says, "Okay, I will." The phone rings shortly after, and my mom answers. I hear her say, "I'm sorry, Jay, but Jenny is tired and is getting some rest." After that innocent with the creepy uncle, I avoided going to Jay's house the whole summer. I stopped talking to her after that because she didn't seem to understand how wrong it was for her 28-year-old uncle to be hitting on a very underage girl. I never told my parents about it, even though I should have, but I was just 11. I was too scared to say anything at the time. Once school started, Jay and her family moved away, so I never had to see her or her creepy uncle again. So, creepy uncle, I hope I don't see you again. When I was 15, my friend invited me into a Kik group chat with people I was dying to know. Hackers, modders, and people who explored the deep web and would send my friend obscure videos from there. I idolized these 10 or so guys. There were a couple of guys with their own things they would send. One guy would send in weird anime and manga, some obscure and funny, some horrifying and graphic. Another would send in weird videos and memes off of the deep web, according to him anyways. But there was one guy who would send in random clips of porn and not say much else. His profile picture was of an Indian man, I would say in his mid-20s. Anyways, when I say nothing fazed the people in this group chat, I mean, absolutely nothing fazed anyone. Snuff videos, gory anime and manga, scary videos, memes, and the like were all taken in stride, and oftentimes just laughed at. But one day, the porn guy sends in a video that I didn't even bother clicking on because I knew it was just another dumb porn video. Until people in the chat sent in a barrage of, dude, what the fuck? And are you fucking serious? Suddenly, porn guy is removed from the group chat, and people were warning others not to watch the video, and that it was literally child porn. My teenage curiosity got the best of me, and I clicked on the video. I won't be too graphic, but if this kind of stuff triggers you, stop immediately. It consisted of an 11 or 12-year-old, possibly of Asian descent, sitting on a toilet in a dingy old bathroom, and casually doing things to an older man from his POV with a phone camera. The group chat died shortly after this. I'm not sure if that was porn guy in the video or just a video he stumbled across, but either way, I wasn't the same for a very long time. I hope wherever that little girl is today, she is okay. And anyway, from that man, creepy porn guy in my old chat, I really hope I never see you in another chat room again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.